then I would watch myself do nothing all week until I hit a point where I was running out of money. And then I would hustle just enough to get out of that desperate situation. And then I would do nothing. And it came and went over decades. But for me, business never really took off because I wasn't motivated by the money. And I look back now and I realize it wasn't that I wasn't motivated by it. I didn't give myself permission to want to earn money.
I'm your host, Tiffany Gilliland, an Australian business and mindset coach with 10 years experience in online marketing and the creator of the Business Bravery framework. I help coaches like you to be brave so you can stop dreaming and start doing that next big brave step and finally make more impact and get more clients. From speaking on camera to selling to launching, my approach to bravery helps you take bigger leaps without the mindset spirals. It's the secret ingredient to bigger results. In this episode, I had the pleasure of chatting with Angelica Hesse, designer, teacher, and opera singer. She's from Portland, Oregon. She's a Scorpio, Waldorf educated word nerd, where hippie values meet highbrow European tastes. Angelica is the founder of Brand Your Light and multi-talented graphic designer with 20 plus years experience in print, web, and brand. She also loves all things psychology. She's brilliant at helping women entrepreneurs identify their unique magic. Angelica turns those insights into carefully crafted designs. In addition to gorgeous visuals, you'll walk away with increased clarity about your business. Angelica especially loves working with healers, counselors, coaches, holistic health practitioners, educators, sustainable businesses, and classical musicians. With that said, this is an amazing episode, and I can't wait to share with you Angelica's stories of business bravery, past, present, and future. Now, who's ready for some business bravery inspiration? Let's dive in. I am so excited to be here with the amazing Angelica Hesse. I'm very excited to talk to her about all of the brave things that she's got going on. We've been having a little pre-chat before we hit record, and I'm very excited to see where this goes. And yeah, Angelica, thank you so much for taking the time to share your bravery stories with us today. Please tell us about you, what you do, who you help, and what brave things that you've got going on in your business at the moment.
Thanks so much, Tiffany. It's such a pleasure to be here. This is actually my first podcast invite. So I'm going to count this as a brave thing right here and now.
I love that. I love that. And you're not alone. I've had a number of people who this has been their first podcast. So
yeah, awesome. So thanks for the opportunity. It's really great. So the question was, what brave things I have going on right now?
Well, give us a little insight into what you do for your business and who you help. Like, let's. I know people heard the intro and everything, but let's,
Sure thing. I mean, my official title is I'm a graphic designer. I generally now tell people I do branding and web design. That's the focus of what I'm doing. And I'm particularly jazzed about working with women service entrepreneurs and helping them figure out what I call their magic. The special, unique thing that is just purely them. That's the actual real reason that people want to work with them. And not the list of credentials they have and not the particular service they offer. Like, there are other people doing all of that. It's the who you are part. So I really love getting on Zooms with my clients and just digging into that stuff together and getting to know them and being a mirror for what is fabulous about them. That's the heart of what I do. I've been doing design and mostly self-employed for 21 years now. Wow. But this form of it, Brand Your Light, is about a 2-year-old rebrand and a new direction that's actually still evolving.
Oh, I love that.
It's the big girl version of my company.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So, like, do you think then, like, it would be fair to say that you actually help your clients be brave and that you help them be brave to, like, isolate that special something in them? Like, is that fair to say, do you think?
Yeah. I think it is, although I'm not officially a coach. I kind of wear a coaching hat in some of what I do with my clients. Yeah. And I see this especially in people who are in like really heart-centered healing kinds of professions, counselors, educators, people who come at it from this point of view of, I'm here to serve, not I'm here to make money, or like that part's an afterthought oftentimes and a struggle for some of those people that I work with. And yeah, so I really love to put on that hat and be like, you know what you do is so valuable and you deserve to take care of yourself, and all of that good stuff that all of our coaches do for us.
Yeah.
And often encouraging them to price a little differently or to package differently or just to talk about it differently.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, for my background too, like that's how I found my way into like coaching and consulting was through doing marketing services. And a lot of that was it's like, hey, I see this vision for you, but if the client wasn't on board with that vision, then it was either, can I get them on board? Can I give them a bit of help and support and
Right.
confidence, or do I need to find a new solution that matches them a bit
Mhm.
better? And yeah, so.
And I've been known to sort of push people a few times to that brink that they don't quite want to step across. I spent 6 years of my career as a classroom teacher in
Mm.
what in the States we call Waldorf schools and the rest of the world calls Steiner schools, Rudolf
Yep.
Steiner schools. And that was always my favorite thing, was helping someone walk up to this thing that felt scary or that they didn't believe they could do
Mm.
and show them how they could
Yep.
and have them prove to themselves that they could.
Okay.
And yeah, so I sort of instinctively do that with a bit with my clients in the process of branding them.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so tell us what brave things you have going on in your business at the moment.
Yeah. So there's a funny thing about me.
Mm.
This has honestly, I think, been true for years, that I would take action in my life and other people would go, wow, that's so brave. And I'd be like, what are you talking about? I The other option was less comfortable. This was the more comfortable option. I'll come back to the immediate
Mm.
now. So
Mm.
what I'm realizing that has looked like for me, there's a lot in our society where people walk a path that they're supposed to walk.
Mm.
And that path is actually not comfortable. It's just the familiar or the expected thing.
Mm.
And the more I'm hearing now of midlife people walking away from cushy corporate jobs because they are, quote, toxic, like that had not occurred to me, but how much that's actually the case
Mm.
in corporate. And I mean, I worked for others very briefly early, in my mid 20s, and kind of walked away from it fast because
Mm.
I got a little too close to being fired a few times because I wasn't just towing the line quite the way people wanted. And so I said, I'm just going to go do this by myself. And because that piece of having to wedge myself into something or be in trouble was scarier than the alternative. The figuring it out by myself doesn't scare me nearly as much. I think because I trust myself and my own skill set and that I have my back.
Mm.
But if I'm going in and I'm not happy and I'm cranky or I'm getting in trouble, like that is so much scarier to me.
Yeah.
So they look brave to other people. In some ways, it's me seeking the more comfortable route. It just looks different than the
Mm.
traditional comfortable route.
Yeah, yeah. Oh my gosh. And that's like quite a common theme. And like even for myself too, like when I created the Business Bravery podcast, it wasn't
Mhm.
because I suddenly thought that I was this beacon of bravery and I needed to tell people about it. It was to connect with others and share other people's stories. But then when I looked back, it was like, oh, actually, hang on. There's all of these things. Like for me, there was like I spent time, moving to other countries and living in other countries, and people will be like, oh, that's so brave. And I was like, for me, that's easy. That doesn't feel brave to
Mhm,
me.
mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it may be too. My mom grew up in Europe. I grew up on the East Coast of the US, and we spent time in Switzerland when I was a kid.
Hmm.
You know, I got to ride a bus by myself for the first time when I was 8 because I asked to do it. It was all, it was maybe like a 5-minute bus ride, but it was a big
Hmm.
deal.
Yeah.
So yeah, that I was already stepping into other spaces was part of my story early on.
Hmm.
And the world to me is bigger than I think it is to a lot of people just based on that early exposure.
Yeah.
Like my world is bigger,
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
straddles
Okay.
a few oceans.
So before we
Hmm.
started recording and everything, You
Yeah.
mentioned that you were in a phase of like lots of momentum and things are growing. Are there
Yes.
things that you're doing that are maybe like pushing your edge or your comfort zone to
Yeah.
make that happen? Like maybe bravery is the wrong word. Maybe it's just,
Yeah.
like pushing the comfort zone or new things that you're doing to make that happen. Like, yeah.
Yes, I circumvented that question and said I would come back. As I look, so you and I first connected about 4 or 5 months ago, and
Yeah.
I was at that point, I was rebuilding almost from zero at that point. It was early in the year, so this was like February, and I had come out of the holidays and having gone to Europe and spent a little too much money and had no new clients, like none on the horizon when I came back in January. It got I knew I had plans for the year and I was starting to do, like a lot of show up a lot on social and just start to reach out to people and have lots of conversations. What I didn't know was that I was going to come back to life just smacking me upside the head. So I actually, before I came home, I rent a 3-bedroom house and I then sublet 2 of the rooms to other people. So I'm only paying part of that rent.
Yeah.
And one of them gave notice while I was still traveling. And about a week after I came back, the other one decided to go with the first one. So I was left holding the bag on this house I cannot afford with no idea where my next dollar was coming from.
Ooh. Oh my gosh.
And I honestly, there were that month and in the following month, there were days of me lying on the floor crying because I didn't know how to get out of this hole. And I had dug some debt holes that I knew were holes that had been getting deeper and deeper, and it all just came to a head in this moment of I can't borrow any more money. Like I'm actually in a place where it will collapse on me if I do that. I can't pay my rent and I don't know where the money's coming from. A complete stranger ended up being my first client that signed that month. And then from there it all snowballed. It was the weirdest thing. One
Hang
of
on.
those.
Well,
Yeah.
how did you find the stranger? What happened? What magical
She's
words? I know there's somebody out there going, "What magical thing did you say?"
okay. So she found me. It was one of those like little credits on the bottom of a website that I hardly even had designed it. It was a Wix site that I built off a template years ago for a very small client. She was connected with somehow secondhand connected with that organization, liked their site, saw that little link, clicked on it, went to my old website of my old brand, and contacted me. And within minutes of being on the phone with her, I was like, this is the kind of person I want to be working with. Like she's an artist and a coach and a spiritual leader. And she's just, she's a senior citizen. She's like a retirement age person who's still out there creating and transforming and writing a book and doing big things. And also like, has her money stories that get in the way and things like that. But she was just exactly the kind of client I'm excited about working with. And I told her that within 10 minutes of being on the phone with her. I said, you're exactly who I want to work with. And it took her about a week to figure out how to even come up with the money she needed to put a deposit on me. But I was running a special that week, so she got it done by the end of the week. And it was like, she was the universe like coming back and saying, you're on the right track. I'm working with you. And from there, it all opened.
Yeah.
I seeded that, but I didn't make that happen. That came to me. What I have, the piece that's been big for me, and it's been percolating for about 2 years, but I think I'm finally stepping into it, is throwing the big pieces of my self-limiting money story to the curb.
Okay.
I grew up around a lot of do-gooders, a lot of spiritually striving people, some of whom are martyrs, a lot of whom hung out in a poverty mentality, a lot of, and this is so well-intentioned, but a lot of like mythology and stories about, like the rich people who give it all away, and that glorifying of poverty that comes from a religious place ultimately. That's actually, it's good, but it's not super functional in our current. It's not super functional if you're trying to adult and take care of yourself. And somehow through my life, I've taken that piece more to heart than I needed to in ways that sabotaged me. You know, I look back when I first went out on my own, I was in my like 27 at the time. And, you know, I did all the good things. I wrote a business plan and I got a loan and I bought the equipment I needed, you know, including a giant Epson printer, because in those days you actually had to print the darn things yourself to show the client.
For graphic
Did
design?
all the things.
Is that for graphic design?
Yep. You know, like here's my high quality proof so you can see what it'll look like. Now we just PDF it and, you know, send it on Google, right?
Yeah.
So I did all the things, but then I would watch myself do nothing all week until I hit a point where I was running out of money. And then I would hustle just enough to get out of that desperate situation. And then I would do nothing. And it came and went over decades, but for me, business never really took off because I wasn't motivated by the money. And I look back now and I realize it wasn't that I wasn't motivated by it. I didn't give myself permission to want to earn money. That was not an okay thing to aspire to in my head.
Wow. Okay. How did you break that down? How did you transform through that? Because so many people listening to this will have similar blocks. Please tell me everything if you don't mind.
Close to 2 years ago, definitely in a coaching program I was doing, there was kind of a worksheet she had us do around limiting beliefs. So I untangled some of it in my head and at least on paper created some new stories. But that doesn't mean it changed all the way. I think where it actually hit for me is I am now 48 and a half. And this last birthday hit me really hard in terms of, oh, I'm closer to 50 than anything else I can name right now. Like there's no other number that's remotely closer. Not even 45 is closer, right? Like,
oh, yeah.
That hit really hard somewhere of like ways in which, you know, I'm a single person who's I spent my life pursuing things that lit me up in one way or another. I've taught, I've studied music, I've moved across the country. Like I chase the thing that my heart says I need to do in the moment, but I haven't built a foundation. I don't own a house. Like I said, I am in more debt than the banks think I should be at this point. So suddenly they stop being my friend.
Yeah.
You can work that system for a pretty long time, but there is an end to it. And it became this sort of existential thing where I was like, it's time that I take care of myself. It's time that I make it in some way that makes me feel that my life is working. There are pieces of what I do that other people are wildly jealous of because I have a lot of freedoms. But there's a part of me that is still waiting for my life to start. And so this was kind of the year I was like, I'm freaking making it happen. There's nobody else making it happen but me. And it's time for the story to just die a death. Like, it's not working for me and I'm over it.
Yeah. So what kind of things are you doing differently to make it happen?
Well, a lot of my implementation in the last 6, 7, 8 months has been heavily informed by a business coach out there named Monica Shaw. Her company is Revenue Breakthrough. She kind of showed up at the right moment and said some things that really landed for me. You know, I go to little things that she does periodically. And one of the tools she really encourages people to do is actually track your revenue every single day. And of course, my notebook's downstairs, but you know, I actually like I have a planner that has every day of the month, and I write down what came in and what my total is for that month, like every single day. And it, you know, it shows you up when you have like 8 zeros in a row, right? Or you're getting to the end of the month and it's like, where am I? So part of it is just really bringing that awareness to it. And with that also went setting concrete quarterly financial goals, which I'd never done. Like, and the first quarter I missed, not by much. I'm surprised how close I got, given that I kind of started from zero that month. Again, that was, you know, January to March. I came really close. We are now 2 weeks from the end of the month, and I have met my second quarter goal. I've exceeded my second quarter goal.
Oh my gosh, that
I
is
know.
amazing.
I'm like, it's
Sometimes
actually
that.
happened. And those, you know, just to be clear, like I was increasing the monthly goal almost about $500 every month.
Okay, love that.
You know, so I'm like inching it up. I am in January. I started at, I sell in day rates. So I started with a day rate that was essentially based on what my previous hourly had been.
Mm. Yeah.
And then did some heavy promo around this price is only good for the rest of the month, and then it's going up. So I did raise my prices then, starting in February, and I will be doing that in a few weeks now, so in early July.
Yeah. So do you work?
There's a piece of bringing in more work, and then there's also this piece of gradually actually scaling what the profit looks like on my time.
Yeah. So do you work in VIP days then for your business?
Yes. Okay. I hate that word with a passion, so I don't use it. It's okay. No, it's what everybody else calls it. There's something elitist about it in a way that doesn't sit right with me. It feels a little icky. So I just call them design days or brand intensives when I'm doing branding. And that's just a personal thing, but it is what everybody else in the online space calls it, VIP day.
Yeah. Okay, nice. So earlier when you were talking about the before time when you were kind of like not doing stuff and then you would hustle just enough to get enough money. So I would imagine that something on that side of things has had to change as well in terms of perhaps being more consistent about outreach and getting new clients. What kind of things have changed on that side of things, and maybe what kind of thoughts have changed for you to help make that happen?
Yeah. You know, it's funny when I first started my business, you know, and this was pre-Facebook, right? This is in the very late 90s. Late 90s? No, early aughts, shortly after 9/11. That was still a world in which business happened in actual rooms with real people. Like that was the only way anybody did business. So I was going, you know, to in-person networking events with it was like the women's section within the local chamber of commerce where I was. Which, you know, looking back, I think that's why most of my clients historically have been women. That's where I started.
Yeah.
And so I've come back to that. You know, funny thing, when I moved here to Portland, Oregon, which is now 18 years ago, at the time I'd intended to get a day job again. And then I looked around and realized that literally everybody in this town is a designer. And there weren't actually that many jobs. And it's like, I didn't even try to market myself here. I just looked at the market. I was like, this is ridiculous. I'm just going to keep working with my clients from other states, which is mostly what I did. But this year, for the first time, I've actually been going out and tapping the local networking groups here in town. Yes, locally based ones, BNIs, ones that, you know, small collectives of people start by themselves. Also reaching out to, you know, people that are like in Facebook groups connected with trainings I've been in or coaching programs I've been in, you know, not so much the big, just like free for all entrepreneur groups. Those are kind of a shit show, honestly. Can I cuss on your podcast?
Australian cussing happens.
And bleep me out if you need to. But the ones where, I think, I don't know if you already spoke with Ina or if that's coming up, but we're actually in a group together around VIP days.
Yes. Yeah.
So like that's an example of someone like I've set up lots of over the last 6 months. I have honestly, it's kind of backwards of how they tell you to do it, but I have done far more just what, you know, called coffee chats, just reach out and connect with people, Zoom calls, than I have true sales calls.
Yeah.
And so it's been much more just growing my network of people I know, getting really good at talking about what I do. And be excited about it with people that I'm not trying to sell, which is just so much easier. Like if you're having trouble like figuring out how to talk about what you do, just talk to people that you're not trying to make buy it. Like those are your words.
Yeah. I often find those are people who are like, oh, actually, I want to work with you. Like it's the times when I'm not trying to. Yeah.
Yeah. So some of those have turned into clients. Some of those have turned into referral partners or collaboration partners.
Yeah.
Or just people out there who know what I do, and like it will come around.
Yeah.
Or some of them like 3 months later then suddenly randomly set up a discovery call and I'm like, oh, okay.
Oh my
So lots of that. And this month I'm trying to get back on my social media habit again, because that one always feels like it takes too much time. But in particular on my personal Facebook page, that actually yields fruit.
Oh, okay.
It creates a lot of, actually just yesterday I got another email by somebody who was referred by a fellow singer. And she's also she's a coach for composers.
Yeah.
And she sent me 2 people now in the last month that, come in as warm leads because somebody they trust referred them.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah. So that visibility among the people who already know and trust you, I think is really powerful.
Yeah. Absolutely.
You're now top of mind for them.
Mm.
Yeah. What used to happen to me when I wasn't doing this is I would be chatting with somebody randomly, and maybe I'd mention what I do very offhand, and they'd say, "Oh, I had no idea that's what you do. I just paid somebody else to do that."
Oh my gosh, yeah.
I just
What is it? If
smack
I
myself
had
like, "Oh
known,
my
I
God."
would have hired you.
Right.
Yeah,
Basically,
I've
that's
been in
what they
that
were saying.
conversation. Yeah.
So if that's not a wake-up call to like talk about what you do,
Yeah.
we think people aren't interested, but you know what? They're interested enough.
Yeah.
They're on Facebook because they're bored.
Yes. Yeah.
And knowing what's going on in our lives is kind of what they're there for.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Hang on a sec.
Yeah. Anytime I'm marketing stuff, and also my clients, if you look at the metrics on stuff, right? And I mean, on Instagram, if 1 out of 5 of your people see your stuff, you're doing really well. It's probably 1 out of 10.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if I post about something 5 times and I think I'm being super annoying, most of my people might have seen it once.
Yes.
And that's only the people that sort of regularly engage my content anyway. The rest of them never saw it.
Yeah.
Right? We're not being as annoying as we think we are.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that is such great advice. Yeah, because not only that, even if somebody has seen it one time, oftentimes like they need to hear it multiple times for them to go, oh, actually, hey, I want to take action on that, or something like that. I mean, if it's not for them, they'll immediately disregard the first time. But if it's something that they're like, oh, that's interesting, and then it's repeated times before they take action. So or can be.
Or I'll catch myself talking to somebody, whatever's going on in their life, and I'm like, oh, I just saw somebody post about that the other day, right? And then I'll have to actually rack my brain and think, who was it that posted that thing that I saw, and then go look for the post, right?
Yeah.
So stuff filters out like that because somebody knows somebody who knows somebody that saw a post.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, so true.
Yeah. And social network.
Okay, so it's been really eye-opening, like hearing your story about the brave things you're doing and that shifts and all of that sort of stuff. Definitely for me too. I'd love to know a bit about like how you got started, or maybe how you transitioned from graphic design into like what you're doing with coaching. Sorry, not coaching, with the web design stuff. Sorry.
Let's see. I alluded to this earlier. How I got started. I was 27 at the time. I was doing design for, it was an organization that sort of straddled being halfway a nonprofit and halfway a government organization. It was so entrenched and slow moving that I coined an acronym inside of the communications department where I moved, DITWILLY, which stands for Did It That Way Last Year. Because I can't tell you how many times I would ask somebody, why are we doing it this way? Because this didn't seem like a good way to do something, right? It wasn't efficient, it wasn't effective, whatever it was. And they would just shrug and say, did it that way last year. Needless to say, after 2 years, I was bored. There was no growth opportunity there. I was chronically about 10 minutes late, which didn't fly well with them. This was the kind of place where you could set your watch by the people leaving at 4:30, like clockwork. It was a complete personality misfit with me. And, I was getting called into HR about the fact that I was 10 minutes late on the regular, and that was looking bad. And, I talked my way out of that and bought myself a few months time, but already I was saying, I can't keep doing this. This is just not, it's not going to work long term. So I just kind of hatched this plan to go out on my own and went to the Small Business Association and learned how to write a business plan and did all the, good student things and crossed my T's and dotted my I's and applied for a loan and got a loan and gave my notice. And then there I was with no income. It was but I'm so glad I did it. It ultimately, there were ups and downs, and there were times in there where I took, temp work for a while to survive. But it allowed me to, move across the country for half a year to do just a spiritual program the year I turned 30, with this sneaky hunch that I might not be moving back. And that proved true, and just take myself somewhere new and figure it out, because I was bringing clients with me. Even if it wasn't a lot, like there was something coming in. Yeah. And the 6 years that I was teaching, I did very little design. There was a tiny bit there, like a magazine I've been doing for 14 years now or something. And it took me through 4 years of being a full-time music student. Most recently, I call this one my midlife crisis. Teaching for various reasons. I loved teaching, but there was a piece with parents that was a real struggle for me.
Yeah. Were you teaching music? Or?
Music was part of what I was teaching. And it was out of that I said, I think I need to study music properly finally. I had wanted to back when I was 18 and walked away from it. And so I said, yeah, I think I'll do that. And I very quickly, it was with the intent of teaching it, but very quickly I went down the rabbit hole of YouTube videos of, master classes at Juilliard. And of course, the next thing you knew, I wanted to be on the operatic stage. This is not a thing you get to do when you were 42. You can't start there. And a lot of people told me that. And I said, okay, cool. I know the facts and the reality of this industry. I'm going to go do this anyway. I'm going to study it. I'm going to see what I can do with it. I don't plan to sing at the Met. That was never the goal. I'm not going to sing at the Met, but I perform a little bit locally, and I teach mostly teenagers, which I just love. And yeah, it's been 8 years now, and it's like I have cultivated a voice, and I got to do that because I had this freelance career, this self-employed thing where, I could be doing a pretty much full-time school load, and then there would be, 2 hours between classes in the middle of the day where I'd sit in the student lounge and bill a nice healthy hourly to a client across the country. And I could fit it in. So that got me through, 4 years where, it's like I was borrowing to pay tuition, but I was covering my expenses in the cracks of time.
Yeah.
In probably 10 hours a week or something. Like I got by on it. I don't remember what it was. Yeah. So, how did I?
Yeah. Kind of like what brave things did you have to do, or thought changes did you have to make to kind of shift? Yeah.
I have always been someone who can a little bit fly by the seat of my pants pretty well. And the more I've done that and it's worked, the more comfortable I am doing that.
Nice.
And so a lot of that I don't think too hard about anymore. I think maybe what I can say for people is all of the things that you're not supposed to do that seem scary, that might not work out. They might not work out exactly how you planned, but you will figure it out. There's a million ways out of any mess you make.
Yeah.
They're not always pretty for a few months. And if you have children depending on you, or, something like that, it's a little different. You have to be a little more circumspect. But for the most part, the things that our society says are like big doomsday things, I mean, even something like bankruptcy isn't the big, scary, horrid thing that they like to tell you that it is. It's a solution to a mess that allows you to move forward.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you're willing to be a little creative and things just be a little wobbly occasionally, like there are ways out of just about everything. Like read every good biography. There are ways out of messes.
Yes. And it's kind of interesting what you say about the bankruptcy thing, because like my understanding is that sort of people, in like I don't want to say like rich people, but people who are used to having more wealth, my understanding is a lot of the time they have projects that go into bankruptcy and then they just like pull themselves back out, and part of their like identity is I'm someone who has a lot of money, and then they quickly make it back. And
Right.
yeah. So
No, there's a weird moral thing attached to bankruptcy that it's that whole Calvinist thing where like money and goodness are somehow equated. That's in America, it's very baked into society here. Like, if you're poor, it's your fault. Like there's weird cultural baggage. And I think that also apply. I mean, it applies to debt in general, and you hear people talk about any business actually requires some sort of debt at some point. Like that is part of doing business. It's what enables capital and growth. Or it solves the cash flow issues of being self-employed as well.
Yes.
Yeah. So I don't know. There's weird moral baggage attached to things like this. And I think about what the alternative was, in the Middle Ages, if you didn't pay your debts, they threw you in prison until you could pay them. That didn't work. Right? Bankruptcy is like actually this modern, innovative solution to say, like, people get in scrapes. Let's give them a chance to start over. Like, it's a legal solution to that prevents you from being either on the street or in jail.
Yeah. Gosh,
unpopular opinion.
Oh, excuse me, sorry. So yeah, I think that's kind of funny that it's like they threw people in prison, because it's like not only would people not get their money back, the state wouldn't have got their taxes, and they'd have to spend more money keeping you in prison.
Well, they didn't really feed you in those days, so they just kind of like die there. But, debtor's prison is a horrible concept.
Yeah, true. Yeah. Okay. All right, let's move on from prison.
Money stories they're a big theme. They're a big theme.
They definitely are. They definitely are. So then, okay, like what are some of sorry, I was gonna ask you a question, but I think you've already answered that, so I don't want to go over it. But here's the question I was thinking, you can tell me, have you already answered this? Sort of like, what's some of like the biggest shifts for your money story, since that's a lot of what we've been talking about between how you started and where you are now? But I think you've kind of already really talked about that a bit. But is there anything else that maybe you haven't talked about?
What's been interesting to notice is how quickly, right? So the thing I sort of consciously changed for myself was just giving myself permission to want to earn well by whatever standard my well is. It's not like I'm not even trying to be a millionaire. Like that's never been the goal.
Yeah.
But to allow my permission to want more than I currently have, that it's actually okay to want that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that doesn't make me a bad person, and it doesn't make me a selfish person.
Yeah.
And it ultimately has become the catalyst for me becoming a self-sufficient person in a way I haven't been.
Yeah.
And as it started to gain momentum, I was talking to a friend just the other day. I was like out at a bar, a musician bar that I often hang out at. And she said, you seem a lot happier lately. And I think I said, yeah, I'm feeling a lot more grounded. She said, that's what it is. You seem grounded. And I was like, oh yeah. And it's true. It's like I feel like I've grown roots in a way I either haven't done in a long time or maybe haven't ever done. And roots that I totally grew myself. Like they are mine. Like my stability is something I have created. And yeah, it's actually really quickly kind of opened up to this sense of like, oh, I can do this. One, it's okay to do this. Two, I can do this. Three, I can like start to feel the future, and like there's a lot more ease there.
Ooh. Oh my gosh. Oh, okay. Tell me more about feeling the future, like and the ease. Oh, I love this stuff.
I think there've been a lot of this one went earlier. This was back to the 2 years ago, starting to begin to change my money story. I've spent 20 years saying I'll never be able to buy a house. Like, because I looked at the reality of things 20 years ago, and I was like, that's never possible based on what I currently earn. And like, short of getting married, that'll never be possible. Like, and I made that like it was like this angry thing that I repeated to the world over and over again, like for 20 years. And then I started catching myself in that every time I said it over the last couple of years. And I was like, nope, not saying that anymore. I'm not making that my truth anymore. Because actually, at some point, I do need to own property if I'm ever going to stop working.
Yeah.
Like it's the only way I see that being possible. And at some point, I will be old enough. I'd like to stop working. I don't think it's going to be soon, and that's fine.
Yeah.
Like so maybe around 80 or 85, it'd be good to be able to be like, oh yeah, I can still have a roof
I can
over
slow
my
down
head.
now.
Because yeah, hi, I live in the US where that's not a guaranteed thing, right?
Yeah.
The rest of the world's like, what?
Yeah. Oh no, not entirely. It's similar
Yeah.
for us in Australia, especially like I'm similar generation to you. So yeah, it's going to be the same for us once we get to retirement age. They're like pushing our retirement ages back, and the housing prices have just kept going up and up. It's very similar.
So
So
you
yeah.
folks ultimately get a pension that's a livable pension, right?
The generations before us do, but because of the whole population explosion, and then there's not enough people working in the younger generations to keep bringing in the tax money for it, it's a possibility that we won't have it for my generation and younger.
Okay.
Yeah. And how livable it will be, right? Because the amount of money doesn't necessarily rise with the amount of inflation. So yeah, there's just things that it's like we've got to be prepared for. Like, yeah, we have more stuff where we have to build our own money for that eventual retirement. So yeah.
Yeah, it's a similar thing.
So yeah, definitely like you, it's on my mind of like, got to do something. I can't just do what my mum did and just be like, I'll be looked after, it'll be fine. Yeah.
But yeah, it was back to this, like, what changed? So when I started catching myself in some of those, bullshit things I was saying to myself and saying, nope, not saying that anymore. Not saying that anymore. Oh yeah. So back to like, what is the sense of ease? As I've started to sort of prove to myself that I can bring in more than I need to survive in a given month. When I start to imagine that going on for 6 months, it very quickly becomes like, oh, like the possibilities then you can do with that excess, so to speak. Like, do I invest that in the business in certain ways? Do I invest that for my future? Do I get to take a vacation where I've actually paid for it in advance? Right? Yeah, that there those places where one often says, oh, I can't do that. Or, oh, I'll never be able to do that. Or, oh, I shouldn't, or whatever. Like starts to disintegrate. And that's, I think, what I'm experiencing is a sense of ease.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay. I love that. So then tell me more about like what brave things do you have coming up in the next 3 to 6 months or in the future, maybe even longer term, depending on how far you plan ahead. I guess you already said that you're like maybe got some extra money to play with. So I don't know, is some of that going business wise, or what brave things do you have coming up?
I think the next brave thing that I need to start doing with my business is actually it's workshops or presentation kind of things. I've gotten really good at doing the one-on-one chats.
Yeah.
And I like to talk, as you can tell. So that's a happy place for me. I'm totally happy, like out at a networking event, like all of that is fine. But like the standing in front of a room or setting up a webinar and being the expert, I've done it with children. It's very different with children.
Yeah.
There's a different kind of grace in speaking to a room full of children than a room full of adults, because they hero worship you from the get-go. And they're
not necessarily true, actually.
Not middle schoolers, but like the little ones do.
Okay. Yeah.
They start there. And if you mess up, you lose some grace. But if you show up the next day and clean up your mess, they usually like hand you forgiveness back and let you become a new you.
Yeah.
Yeah. By 13 or so, that starts to change. And I actually, when I was teaching, I remember this, right? I would go into my classroom every day and talk to these kids, and that was fine. But when I had to stand up in front of the parents, like in an assembly, and announce something, I was tripping all over my words for the first year or two. And then I got good at it.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
I do it as a performer now on the stage. It's like I love getting on the mic between, like, I'm a classical singer, and classical singers normally walk on, do their thing, and walk off. But
Mm.
I love doing the more, like bar kind of scene thing where you just get on a mic and you work your crowd, and you chat
Nice.
with them and you tell them stories and that kind of thing. So I have a lot of the foundations for it, but something about the teaching, presenting, and maybe especially in the online format to a
Mm.
room full of strangers and adults who you're somehow supposed to be an expert to, right? Like that layer of like, am I an expert? Should I be an expert?
Hang on,
It's
hang on a
weird. We
minute.
get in our heads.
How long have you been doing graphic design for? Like, actually, this is
I
really
mean,
funny because my
I
clients
know.
come to me with this and they're like, and you're not the only one. Like, one of them
Yeah.
had 14 years experience in finance. And I
Right.
was like, so how much more do you need to be a step ahead of the people you're helping? Like,
Oh, you're so right. Thank you.
yeah, sorry, you didn't ask me
No, and
for the coaching
I soapbox.
experience.
I get on the same soapbox myself for other people. It's so funny. Yeah.
Yeah.
We get in that place where we think
Hmm.
it's like if there's anybody who does it better than us, we're not good enough, which is hogwash. But we do that, right? Like, well,
Yeah.
they could find somebody who's better than me, so why would they listen to me, right?
Yeah. But it's funny though, because like that same thought could enter your head before getting on a one-on-one call, but it doesn't, right? Like
It
what's your thinking when you go into a one-on-one call?
That's interesting.
Sorry.
I think every once in a while I do get on with someone where I can tell they're sort of like shopping around and they're comparing.
Okay. Yeah.
But most of who I've been on one-on-one calls with, like the truth is they either don't know somebody else who does what I do, or they know me and like me.
Yeah. So what
So
if
I
you
have
assumed
this faith
that?
that they
What if
scheduled with me because they actually want to talk to me, I guess.
yeah, yeah. But what if if you assumed that while doing the webinar and
Right.
and assumed that they're
Yeah.
booking the webinar because they want to see your perspective
Right.
and you're showing
Yeah.
them everything and
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. No, and I think, yeah, I have to, I haven't done the presenting on, like on Zooms or whatnot. The weird thing about it is you don't have the live audience palpable thing going on. You can't
You
hear
can
them,
you can do
can't
that,
feel them. You
but
can
you
see
can
them. Yeah.
but you can do that. Like there's not just one way to do a webinar,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like it doesn't have to be that 1 to 100 people where you don't see anyone. You can
Right.
start with like a room of like
Yeah.
10 people,
Yeah.
see people and see their interactions. Yeah. Because
Yeah.
I'm like that. For me, I find it hard to do webinars where you can't see any reactions from people, but if I can see
Mm-hmm.
facial expressions, see where they're
Mm-hmm.
zoning out, things like that, to help keep them
Yeah.
connected. Bit
Yeah.
more like being in a classroom because I too have had some teaching in my background. So yeah,
Okay.
it's sort of yeah.
Have you noticed this too? Like this, having taught children for years, it always wigs me out when I teach a room of adults because you don't get sound feedback from adults in the same way. Like you say something, the children always have something to say back.
Oh
Whereas
right.
grown-ups, if you're doing your job right, the grown-ups just sit there and absorb. But it's kind of
Okay.
creepy because you're like, is this
Um.
landing? Is it
Oh, I see. Yeah, yeah.
they're
I
too
kind of
polite.
oh, I get where you're coming from, but I ask specific questions to make
Mhm.
sure they're getting it.
Right.
Yeah. And I specifically, sort of ask people, does that make sense and all of that
Yeah.
when I'm doing presenting. Although that said, I've got some coming up this in next week where I'm kind of doing it out to the masses a bit more and a little less having that interactive thing. So yeah, in that case, it'll be a thing of, bring your questions to the group and yeah, try and
Yeah.
anticipate questions and things like that.
Right.
But yes, the way I do my webinars is I I kind of have things where people can do something interactive. So I can either
Mhm.
see that they're doing the activities and they're getting it, or I ask them specifically, so what are your thoughts on that? What and some of
Yeah.
that stuff. So
Yeah. Love
yeah.
it.
Because I need that for me. Like
Uh-huh.
yeah.
It's so funny, right? Because for all of the time you spend classroom managing a group of children, as in like controlling when they're talking,
Yeah. Yeah.
I appreciate the fact that they actually chime in and interrupt and have opinions all the time.
Yes. Yeah. For me, I was excuse me, I was teaching while I was living overseas in South Korea. So I was teaching English to kids who English is not their first language, obviously. And yeah, like, and they still did the chime in and the, you know, teacher, and some of that stuff. So yeah, definitely. But yeah, that teaching adults in that whole thing, yeah, was definitely, it's always been different. Yeah.
They're so well behaved. It's like almost creepy.
Yes and no. For me, it was a struggle teaching English, like compared to when I've taught things like marketing and project management and stuff here in the West. But when I was living in Korea teaching adults over there, it's very different because like they want you to teach them everything. But my style is to come in and go, okay, so what are you struggling with? Tell me what you need. They're like, what? No, teacher doesn't ask me anything. Like it's just very authoritative, and I'm not that person. Yeah. I mean, I am, but it's kind of like the way I do my coaching and everything. It's sort of like, okay, where are you at? Where are you struggling? And then I'll, you know, do a lesson plan on the fly and get it sorted.
Right, right. Also a seat of the pants person. Cool.
So yes, sometimes I need some pre-planning. But yeah. So yeah.
Some of my best lessons were ones that I actually pivoted and made something up on the moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where I just looked around and said they need something different, and I just did.
This isn't working for this group. Yeah.
Yeah. Doesn't always work, but some of the absolutely most golden ones happened like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so you said you're going to move into doing webinars, and like, is there anything else you're doing?
Workshops in town, and maybe by the time this releases, these will be live. But I have the wacky, I have the wacky title idea, and this may be a U.S. reference, which is your website is like the dating app Tinder, and how to get more people to swipe right.
My gosh, I love that.
That's my fledgling workshop title. Anybody out there listening, you can't steal it. I said it first.
Well, the good news is that I'm about 4 months behind on between interview and getting it turned around. So you've got some time.
Now I have a deadline. See how that works?
Yeah, you and me both.
October, mid-October, note to self.
Yeah. Oh my God. I love that though. And it's great how you're bringing in kind of like the modern take, attaching it to something that's already, you know, well known and people get. Yeah. And yeah, definitely would attract more of your type people. What do you suggest people can do to get more people swiping right on them? Like putting your spot out. Sorry.
It's okay. So that idea came out of, I mean, it's actually true that my understanding is that the statistic is it's about 2 seconds until people either say yes or no to a website. So they decide within 2 seconds whether they're going back or whether they're going to read the site.
Yeah. I heard 3 seconds, but good to know that we have.
There we go. 2 seconds, 3 seconds, something like that. On Tinder, I think it's about 1/4 of a second, but it's the same idea.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
At least if it's a guy swiping.
Yeah.
They're just like, so yeah, that idea that there really is an instant impression you're making. Some of that's visual. Some of that is, you know, what is it that you're saying above the fold, as we say, that first screen full? Do people know before they scroll or before they hit back, like without any effort, what you're doing and who you're doing it for and what's in it for them?
Yeah.
You know, so that's the messaging piece of it. And then just, does it feel right? You know, that in many ways is more like the Tinder experience. Like, do I like them? Do I not like them? It's very instinctive.
Yeah. Oh,
and ideally we want our perfect people to land on our site and go, ooh, I like her, like right away.
Yeah.
Before they can read anything, they should just have that feeling that like, oh, this feels like my kind of people.
Yeah. And maybe even she gets me, or
she gets me, I like her, like she could be my friend, like what are, you know, like we're in some sort of culture bubble together. And right, it's like at the same time, I feel like Instagram has done this thing to everybody where everybody's stuff looks the same.
Yeah.
Like, it's so ad oriented. And now
Yes.
everybody's copying everybody else's look, which is entirely the opposite of the idea of branding.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many new brands I see people unveil, and I see designers doing this, and
Yeah.
they look exactly like everything else that's out there.
Yes. Yeah.
It's not really a
100%.
brand.
Yes.
And it's not going to last because that
Mm.
look is going to evolve.
Yeah.
Like that thing that's so in right now is going to look really dated in 5 years.
Mm. Yes. Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's so true. Yeah.
So, which comes back to figure out who you are and make
Mm.
that the core.
Yeah. Yeah.
Your look of your words.
Mm. Yeah. Oof, yeah, sorry, you've got me thinking about different
Yeah.
websites that I've done over the years. And like
Mm-hmm.
for me, like I yeah, like I'm better as the marketing person, and having somebody like a specialist like you come in and go, oh, here's some things, and I can be like, oh, I like this, I don't like that, or something like that. But then there's been times where I haven't had the money to do that. And so, yeah, my designs for myself have been kind of basic, just because it's like, if I keep it basic, they won't be horrible to look at. Do you know what I mean? It's like, this suits my skill set right now. But yeah, they can definitely be dated and things like that. I can't wait until I can.
Simple is better than chaotic. So
Yes.
I will take simple over chaotic.
Yeah. Although I did my latest rebrand, I had somebody come in and help me, and she was amazing and all that sort of stuff too. But definitely, it wasn't necessarily the full branding experience because, yeah, of my
Mm-hmm.
background in marketing. So it's like, oh no, I kind of know where I want this to go. I just, yeah, needed help.
And did the window dressing. Yeah.
But yeah, but talking to you, it's just like, oh yeah, I definitely know at some point in the next probably yeah, couple of years or sooner, I definitely have to work with someone like you who's like, oh yeah, here's all of the knowledge and skills and perspective,
Right.
and here's how we
Yeah.
take it to that next level. So yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
No, and that part of I don't get to do that with everyone I work with, but when we do that brand strategy piece, it's really fun because the client is doing homework, like they've done some brain dumping in advance, that
Yeah.
thing that we don't make time to do for ourselves until somebody gives it to us as homework, and then
Yeah.
we do it. Nothing like a provider deadline to make us like take the do your business part of your business seriously. And then we get on a call and we talk about it, like we
Mhm.
deep talk about it.
Yeah.
And that's that kind of coaching space I go into. And I've had several people just be like, wow, this was really rich, or this was really deep, or
Mhm.
you got me thinking about things I hadn't thought about.
Yeah. Oh
Um,
yeah.
yeah, that it just feels really good to do that. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
That right there is, that was worth them working with me. And like that feeling is really lovely.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay, Angelica, it has been amazing talking to you and hearing all of your stories of bravery, and especially talking about the money stuff. Definitely
Oh,
lots of inspiration for me. So,
we're so
um,
not alone with this. I wish we all talked about it more.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that's coming. I don't know. I come
Okay.
across a lot of people who talk about it more, so I don't think about it so much now. But yeah, I think
Coming,
it's
but
coming. Mm.
yeah, I think it's as
Cool.
sticky as it is because traditionally money is a thing we haven't talked about.
Yeah, yeah. And I was just going to say, in fact, maybe I need to change my words and go, maybe I think it's here. It's here. Like,
Mm-hmm,
let's just talk about it. Like, let's just bring that into existence. But yeah.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Okay, so for anybody, like, of course, we'll have links to all of your stuff in the show notes. But for anybody who's like me, who's like, oh, screw the show notes, I just want to come find you right now, where's the best place to come find you?
Yeah, I brandyourlight.com is my website. That's also my Instagram handle and my Facebook business page. It's very consistent everywhere. Where else is it? Yeah, that. One of these days I'll have a Pinterest account, but I don't currently.
Yeah.
Maybe I will by the time you're hearing this.
Ooh.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that's where you find me. You can schedule, a free call with me, or you can book me for time if you know you have something you just want done next week.
Yeah.
Yeah, or chat me up on Instagram.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Yeah, it's interesting what you said about the whole Pinterest thing, because that's one of those sites and I'm like, oh, I should do more on Pinterest. but it's just the time I got to choose where. And I think for me, it's like TikTok's the next one I've got to
Okay.
master or
That
not
one I'm not
master, but
touching.
do.
That's one thing I can just erase off the list.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for everything.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you,
And,
Tiffany.
thanks for listening to the Business Bravery podcast. Has this episode inspired you to do something brave? Even if it's only send a difficult email, please share it with me on Instagram or other social media channels. Feel free to tag me at Tiffany G Studios. That's TIFFANY. G for golf, STUDIOS, no spaces, no underscores, etc. Or you can use the hashtag Business Bravery Podcast so that I can cheer you on, and together we can inspire other coaches and course creators to do brave things in their business and life. Now, I'm Tiffany, and I'll leave you with this one last thing. What's one brave thing you're going to do today? It doesn't have to be big. Even the smallest steps can create the most massive results. So again, feel free to share it with me either publicly or privately so that I can cheer you on. That's it from me. Until next time, bye for now.